Welcome to Retinal Realities, the podcast where we explore real life experiences with people living with visual impairment, honestly, practically, and with inspiration. A special thank you to Roche Products for supporting this conversation. I'm your host today, Karen, and we're talking about something very exciting and complex, that is flying with a guide dog, starting with local travel, and then we'll take it a step further into international travel. Joining us is Marisa, an experienced traveler who navigates the skies with her guide dog regularly. Dottie and Marisa have traveled to numerous countries as well as internally. Together, we'll unpack what it takes to prepare, what happens at the airport, how handler and dog adapt along the way, from check-in to landing, and everything in between. This is a story of planning, partnership, and trust. Marisa, welcome, and let's take off.
Thank you. Thank you for that lovely introduction, Karen. I'm looking forward to talking to the audience about flying with a guide dog.
Okay, well then let's get started. First of all, I know that people think it's very simple. You can't just rock up at the airport with your dog and say, "Hi, I'm here, I'm going to travel." So what is the process of preparing to fly with a guide dog, from booking your ticket to arriving at the airport? What are the behind the scenes things that you get up to?
The first and the most important thing is to get an airport letter from Guide Dogs South Africa. You phone the South African Guide Dogs Association, or you can even write an email to them. This information should have been given to you when you got your guide dog in training. They give you this option, but they give you a letter which confirms that your dog is an assistance animal and that they have the right to fly with you. Of course, when you're flying with a guide dog, that guide dog actually flies totally free of charge. So it's not like flying your pet. You have to get a pet box and you have to book them in through cargo. A guide dog actually goes into the cabin with you and sits at your seat with you.
Oh, that's wonderful. And Marisa, is there any other documentation you need other than that letter?
Well, if you have that letter, then it means that your dog has the right to enter the cabin with you. It is also good to have with you the vaccination certificate of your dog in case that is asked. I have had once at one of the airports that I went through security, also been asked about the microchip that was added to Dottie when she was still at Guide Dogs, about if she is chipped and what the chip number is. So be ready for questions that you might be asked at security. They also sometimes want to ensure that you haven't misrepresented your assistance animal as an assistance animal and might ask you questions about the training that your animal has gone through to ensure that they are safe to enter a cabin. So be always prepared to be able to answer questions about where your dog was trained, who trained your dog, and have the contact details available for your association, your South African Guide Dogs Association, or any other assistance animal association which has trained your animal, because they have the right to double check your documentation.
Oh, fantastic. And yes, I think that sounds like very sensible advice. Thank you. And then what has your personal experience been like navigating airport security, boarding with your guide dog? Is there anything special there that you'd like to add for people?
Well, you'll notice when you arrive at the airport with your dog that you will most probably fast-tracked into the business class area to register, because the process of registering a guide dog is a little bit more complicated. And it actually starts from the day that you decide that you want to fly. It is a good idea to announce to the airline that you're going to be flying with a guide dog. The reason for this is, I know a lot of persons with guide dogs find that this is discriminatory because we are treated differently than anybody else. And we should also be able to just rock up at the airport and fly like anybody else. But there is also good reasons for this, because nowadays people book their seats all online. So when you have booked a seat about 2 days before the date of your flight leaving, you normally get a chance to choose your seat and confirm that you are actually going to fly. Now imagine if everybody has confirmed their flights and have they booked their seats, the only seats left when you arrive, when you book on the day, might be seats where it's not allowed for a guide dog to sit. For instance, persons with disabilities and visual impairment and their guide dogs can't sit next to emergency exits on a plane. So those seats can't be assigned to guide dogs. And often the airline would like to book off the seat next to you so that you can sit on the one seat and the guide dog can sit in front of an empty seat which is next to you. So if there's space on a plane, they would like to try and do that. And if people have all booked their seats, there might not be two seats next to each other available where these can be booked. There's also other requirements that needs to be taken into account. There might be a person on the flight with severe allergies that have disclosed this to the airline and who can't sit close to a guide dog. So this needs also to be taken into account. So it's very, very important to let your customer service of the airline know that you're coming and that you are going to fly with a guide dog so that they can adequately prepare the cabin to receive you with no issues.
Gosh, so yes, as you point out, there's lots of planning involved, definitely. And the better you plan, the easier it'll be for you. And then let's talk about Dottie for a little bit. How does Dottie cope during the flight itself, especially the slightly longer flights? Like I know you flew not long ago from Johannesburg to Cape Town, those flights that are hours and not just 3/4 of an hour.
What I do, and this is tips that I would give anybody that arrives, is don't expect to be able to take your dog for a busy. That's what we in the guide dogs community call it when we take a dog for a turn to the garden while you're in the airport. I have noticed quite a few airports mentioned that they have this possibility available, but I have visited many airports and I've never found one where it is practical because the security doesn't allow it. You've already went through security, so they can't allow you to go outside and come back. It could be a security breach. So don't plan to take your dog for a busy just before you're board. You have to plan your arrival that you can do it just before you enter the airport, and then take that into account that you're going to wait 2 hours at the airport and possibly fly another hour and a half, 2 hours before your doggy will be back on the ground. So, most guide dogs, 4 hours, 5 hours, they can hold quite successfully. When you arrive at your new destination, also remember it always takes you sometimes a half an hour to an hour to get out of the airport because you have to collect your baggage. And because you are blind, you normally are the last of the plane because you have to wait for everybody to leave the plane before your person from the assistance department will come and collect you. And then sometimes I've been pushed in a wheelchair and somebody else walk with Dottie, and other times I've been able to be guided down with a sighted guide together with Dottie. Then you get into the main building and then you have to wait for your suitcase also to arrive, and that can also sometimes be delayed. And especially because you yourself can't find your own suitcase. So it takes you a little bit longer for somebody who is looking for your suitcase because they can't easily recognize it. They don't know how it looks. I've often been asked by my assistant, what color is your suitcase? Then I say, sorry, I'm not sure. I think it's red, or it might be blue. And I mean, you can't explain or describe your suitcase. So they often wait till it's the last suitcase on the van before they are sure that this is most probably yours. This is also something that you must always disclose when you book in as a tip. Disclose that you won't be able to find your suitcase because some airlines do help. They either book your suitcase in as a priority suitcase or they put a little disability sticker on it to help the person find it or something to help you. So then you can tell your assistant, oh, my suitcase got a priority sticker on it or it's got a disability sticker on it. It really helps. So if the airline has that alternative way to help you to identify your suitcase, it will make just so much faster to leave the plane and the airport. But we are confronted with many issues. So plan with that in mind, that you might take an hour to be out of the airport. So what I have done in the past with Dottie is I've asked my assistant to just quickly take me outside so that she can wee, and then I go back to go and collect my suitcase.
Yeah, I could actually feel Dottie's anxiety even sitting listening to you. Shame. And then what advice would you, with your huge experience, give to somebody who's flying for the very first time with their guide dog and they're really anxious about it? They don't know what to do, where to turn to. You've given a lot of advice, but is there anything extra for a first timer?
I know. I also flew for the first time. I was very, very anxious. And I tried to find somebody who has flown before, and I couldn't find anybody. It was difficult because quite a few guide dog owners have never flown with their guide dogs. It's not so many that has done it. But things that I was suggested to by the person that I got hold of at the end was to actually put yourself to ease is when you put your little dog to ease. And one of the best ways to do it is to get their favorite little things. For instance, what I did is I had a favorite blanket for my guide dog, which I put on the floor so that she knows this is a safe place for her to lie down. And I got her favorite toy as well, so that she can hold on to that. Also, be prepared to read up about your airline, because every airline might have their own requirements. Although they all have to take on board guide dogs, some of them have specific requirements. For instance, one of the airlines that I flew with required that your guide dog has to have a special harness that clips into the seatbelt of the aircraft. So make sure you have it, because you don't want to be denied entry onto the flight because you haven't read the requirements. There's also one or two airlines that require you to send the vaccination certificate beforehand to the customer service department for their own public liability insurance, to ensure that your guide dog has been vaccinated against rabies, etc., etc. And all of that is really, really important. So go to your website of the airline, search for flying with a guide dog, and see if there's any special requirements that the airline that you are flying with has with regards to flying with a guide dog. If you have all the information, and you are prepared with all her documents, and you have all her favorite things with you to make it possible for her to fly in comfort, it will also put your own mind at ease.
That's fantastic advice. Thank you so much, Marisa. Now we're going to talk about international travel. Now, you've traveled to many, many different countries, so I'm sure you'll find this question an easy one to answer. Do regulations for guide dogs differ from country to country? And what challenges can travelers face when entering different countries with their guide dogs, especially if they're doing a multi-country trip?
First of all, I wouldn't suggest a multi-country trip, except if the multi-country trip is something like visiting the EU, because if you fly from Switzerland to France, for instance, that's inside the EU's Schengen area, and they will all follow the same rules. But flying from, for instance, South Africa to an African country and then to the EU, each of these countries will have their own entry requirements and exit requirements, and it can be onerous. I would first suggest, where you are flying to, make sure that you understand the requirements long time before you fly. Don't think this is a 2-week thing. I recently flew from South Africa to Europe. It took us about 4 months to get the documents in place. It is very, very important that you understand that it is not something that you can do at the drop of a hat, flying overseas with a guide dog. Apparently, the second time flying to Europe from South Africa is going to be easier with Dottie, but I have no experience with that, so I can't really confirm that. But the reason is that your dog have to have a veterinary clearance before they can fly to Europe. And I think this is also true for other countries like the United States and Australia, that you have to have veterinarian clearances in place before you can actually arrive. There's also some regulatory clearances that you have to have in place flying out of South Africa with an animal and also entering a new country with a guide dog, because there's export permits that needs to be in place and import permits that needs to be in place. Although the flight with your guide dog is going to be free, it is not an inexpensive process, because to do those veterinarian checks requires several visits to your vet. In the case of flying to Europe, you have to send a blood sample of your guide dog to a European laboratory. The test can't be done in South Africa. It has to be done in Europe, normally in Germany, where they do some blood tests on your guide dog to exclude certain conditions that your animal might have had in the past and illnesses, which will exclude entry into Europe, and also to ensure that the rabies vaccination that your guide dog has had has taken effect, and there is some antibodies in the guide dog's blood. And all of that is quite expensive to do. There's also some veterinarian checks that you have to do through the state veterinarian in South Africa. And to get those in place is also time-consuming, expensive, and also very, very onerous with regards to documentation. So plan at least 3 to 4 months to be able to get all in place.
Wow, there certainly is a huge amount to think about. And then just thinking about that, I know that you've traveled with different airlines. Do you find some more accommodating than others, or are they generally much of a standard throughout?
There's an international aviation authority called the IATA, and they set the standards and rules worldwide for airlines that fly internationally. And then there's also in-country rules. For instance, flying to America is less onerous than flying to Europe, for instance, from South Africa, because of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which allows flying with a guide dog and mandates non-discrimination. And they would like to make it as easy for a person with a visual impairment to be able to fly in with a guide dog. But that's a standard set in that country. Many countries have disability legislation and non-discriminatory legislation, but it's not always extended to guide dogs because of guide dogs being a dog and might be carrying diseases which can put safety to the population. So in some countries, the safety regulations takes precedence because of this. And that is why you have to research every single country that you go to, read their policy, go to the National Department of Transport, find out if they have any policy in place with regards to the entry of guide dogs from foreign countries. What is the procedures? What is the requirements? And also, what documents do you need to have with you when you arrive at the airports? Because all of the countries that I have flown to have put in place the requirement that a state veterinarian can, on arrival at the airport, look at your dog to ensure that they are healthy and can enter. And it is possible that in some countries there can be a requirement for quarantine as well for your guide dog. Although most countries try to avoid this, but be 100% sure you know everything about the country. I would also suggest to phone the Guide Dogs Association of the country that you are flying to, or send them an email and ask them for any tips and assistance from their side. They might even be able to offer you a letter in the language of that country supporting your requirement to be able to travel with a guide dog.
Wow, there is just so much to think about. Thank you, Marisa. And then we just spoke about long journeys. I know going to Europe is pretty long, but going to America is even longer, These long journeys and new environments can be very demanding for the dog. How do you ensure that Dottie stays comfortable, healthy, and stress-free during that long flight? Especially, we spoke about her break needs earlier, and there's no garden on a plane, and she certainly can't use facilities for humans. So how does Dottie cope?
Yes, I think with a very, very long flight, you have to prepare that she might need to do a busy in that 14 hours or possibly longer that you will be traveling. Guide dogs don't like to go indoors, and they are trained to actually avoid going indoors. But of course, when the need is so great that they must go, you have to be prepared. What I was advised by the Guide Dogs Association is to have bed pads in my traveling luggage. So bed pads is a foldable pad and it's absorbent, and you can fold it out. And what you do is, apparently a cabin crew are trained. I didn't know this and I have never needed it because Dottie has been so good. Both long trips that I've done with her, she, well, most probably needed to go, but she never advised that she needed to go so desperately. But if you feel like that she needs to go desperately, then you can, in front of the toilets on the plane, lay out your absorbent pads on the floor, maybe 2 or 3 on top of each other. And of course, with the permission of your cabin crew. And it depends from cabin crew to cabin crew if they will allow this. This is actually a question that I got with both of my long distance flights that I got, what procedure I would require. And I did mention this, and in both cases it was approved. And then you allow her to go. A guide dog will go wherever you want her to go. So you tell her to go, and she will then do her business there, and you give it to the cabin crew to throw away. As easy as that. I've never needed to use it, but I was ready to be able to use it where I go. One of the things is also, if you can avoid it, don't fly with connecting flights on a foreign trip. Because if you fly, for instance, from South Africa to Europe via Dubai, you are not exiting the security section in Dubai. You stay actually as a transit passenger. And then it's impossible to take out your guide dog there. So if you can, try to fly direct in one go to your destination and avoid doing these in-transit type of travel, because you can't leave the airport building in these places. Although they say it's possible, I've never found that it's possible. I've always asked and it's just not possible. There's no ability to do it. If you fly, for instance, to Europe, you might be flying to Germany, but you're flying via Amsterdam. If you arrive in Amsterdam, you're already in Europe. So then you can exit, because you've already entered Europe in Amsterdam. And although you're going to take a connecting flight to Germany or to Poland or to Italy, it doesn't matter because you're already in Europe. So try to fly direct if you can.
Oh, fantastic advice there, Marisa. You've certainly given everybody a huge amount to think of. And then as we wrap up today's episode of Retinal Realities, a heartfelt thank you to you, Marisa, for sharing your insightful experiences and vast experience of traveling locally and internationally with Dottie. While air travel alone comes with its challenges, preparation, advocacy, and taking Marisa's advice and preparing well and using all the facilities available for your guide dog will make it not only possible, but really enjoyable. Of course, thank you to Roche Products for their ongoing support in bringing conversations like these to you. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with others who might benefit and join us again. And to everybody listening, please remember to subscribe to the series by clicking on the subscribe button on this page. This will help to keep this popular series going. All our podcasts are available on www.retinasa.org.za under the tab Learn. Thank you.